Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the final session today. My name is David Jakes, and I am the director of the Rethink Spaces studio for EdTechTeam. And we're really proud to announce today that we have launched. How's that? Okay, what we've done is we've launched the EdTechTeam Rethink Spaces Design Studio today. And we're really excited about what that means and what that represents for our clients in terms of helping them create compelling and dynamic spaces for teaching and learning. So I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and there's my information there. You can follow me at Drew Jakes. But what I want to do today is give you a big picture talk about learning spaces and what it means to really take a look at 5 ideas about compelling learning spaces that will help you move forward in terms of how you think about spaces. So again, EdTechTeam believes in a number of things that represent about a honeycomb, and one of those portions of the honeycomb is about inspiring spaces. So what we want to do is always when we move forward in education, we want to consider the location where kids learn. That means that we think deeply about how different kinds of spaces, both digital and physical, influence learning. So again, if you have any questions about the Learning Space Design Studio, please feel free to ask any of the team members. But we'd be glad to assist you. All right, so the title of this presentation is 5 Things to Know About 21st Century Learning Spaces. And there is a lot to know about learning spaces. And when I talk about learning spaces, I'm talking about both physical and digital learning spaces, and the opportunity to craft really a new kind of landscape for kids to learn. So what I'm going to do is take you through 5 things. Again, these are ideas that form a sort of a belief system about where learning can go in contemporary spaces. So, if you take a look at, have you seen this before? Everyone's smiling because, yeah, you've seen this. And, in a lot of cases, this is what we still have today in our schools. Now, I started teaching in 1986. The classrooms, obviously, when I started teaching, are still very similar. And if you take a look at this image, think about what this means. This is about an 800 square foot classroom. You've got rows of desks. Kids have limited resources to work. And my question to you is, does this constitute a future-ready learning space? Okay. My background includes design work for a teacher course in Chicago. And so when we went into schools, this is what we saw all the time, and it's not a surprise to you. Now these kids are admittedly posing this. But they're good at it. They've done it before. So the girl in the center is actually asleep. So the question is how do we take this and reshape this? Because this is indeed still the primary location of learning in schools. We're not going to be turning the schools down anytime soon. So if you take this 800 square foot cinder block, and what do you do with that to make that actually relevant today? So there's a lot of things, good things that took place in this question, right? I wonder about, with the advent of technology and the explosion of one-to-one technologies, what that means. And here's the danger of one-to-one and not thinking about learning spaces as you move forward. This is what you get. Okay, and you consider this. You have a contemporary technology and all that affords, and do you want to still put kids back in the same seats for that technology? And one of the things that we always see now is people are saying, what do we do with our computer labs? Because one-to-one, you have an opportunity to think where your computer labs can be. But in most cases, if you think about what a computer lab is, it's kids sitting in the front of computers in rows. And if you don't rethink spaces as you move to one-to-one and you have more ubiquitous technology, I would suggest that you have more computer labs, kids sitting in rows in front of the screen. So one-to-one technology and the implementation of that kind of technology is an opportunity, and one not to be missed, to rethink spaces. Okay? So it looks like that, and here's the first idea. It's a very important idea, is that when you talk about 21st century learning spaces or contemporary learning spaces or future-ready learning spaces, however you want to frame it, the design of spaces is based in the student experience. Let me say that again. If you can leave here with one thing, is when you think about reshaping classroom spaces or any learning space for that matter, you have to start here. what do you want the student learning experience to be? A lot of times people start off with what kind of furniture do we want to put in, what kind of things. And that's the wrong way to go. So what you have to do as a school, as a community, as a group of teachers, is sit down and identify those things that you believe deeply in about what you want the learning experience to be. Those in the design world are called design drivers. And those influence then the choices you make about the furniture and the other things. So the first thing to remember about spatial design is experience first, then second. So you have something like this, and when you're looking at that, it's the same kind of condition as I showed you, but when you look at this and you walk into that space, what is the invitation that space offers? So one of the things that's interesting about space design is developing invitation into learning that the space is actually communicating. It's actually a declaration, and that goes back again, identifying the experience you want, and the kinds of expectations you have for what learners would do in spaces. And so when you go from this, if you walk into this space, what would you expect that was going to take place? You're going to lecture, right? So the space actually communicates the intent of the learning about to take place. In the design world, that's called the threshold experience. You cross the threshold of the door. Space communicates to the learner the intent of what's about to happen. So spaces, when you start working with experience, you start thinking about the invitation, and students enter into the space. The space itself, the learning space, communicating to the learners. And so when you walk into this is a different condition. You know something different is going to happen there. And words in education matter. And I would suggest to you to start thinking about, if I were to ask you to describe the characteristics of a classroom, you could list those out right now, right? You know exactly what that looks like. When you're on TV or in a movie, classrooms are representing the same in a particular way. They all have the same attributes. What if I were to ask you to shift your idea about where kids learn through the studio concept? And if I were to ask you to describe a studio, what would that be? So the simple shift in terms of how you describe what kids learn is incredibly important. Shifting from a classroom to a studio sets up that invitation, that declaration that what you do in this space is going to be different. So the second thing, can't see that. Second idea here is that 21st century learning spaces are multidimensional. That's an important thing to consider. And when I talk about that, excuse me a second. So when I'm talking about a multi-dimensional space, I'm talking about three elements. And the first part of that multi-dimensional space is the physical space. It's talking about the classrooms, it's talking about the hallways. And by the way, if I were to ask you how much space in a typical school is taken up by hallway space, what would you say is the percentage of usable space? Yeah, it's about 30%. 30% of usable space in the school is assigned to corridors, for passing grades and things like that. So when you're talking about classrooms, you're talking about adjacent hallways, you're talking about libraries, you're talking about commons, you're talking about any of those kinds of spaces are classified as physical spaces. The emergent trend in learning spaces is now the emergence of digital space for learning. And when you think about that, I think we could be defined it in a lot of ways, and I don't have time to talk about it. But the idea is that if you're going to purchase all these devices, what do they connect to? They connect to apps, do they connect to websites? But what I'm suggesting here is that schools develop and design a dedicated digital space that's equal in stature to a physical space. When we start talking about multidimensional spaces, we're talking about both physical and digital spaces that combine. And then we have the opportunity to start thinking about what virtual experiences look like. There's a lot of emerging virtual kinds of experiences. I'm sort of still working this out in my mind, but I would say a virtual experience is some kind of specific reality experience that occurs digitally in a physical space. And so there's a lot of different ways in which that's coming about. So I think these three elements shape a contemporary vision of what an ecology of space can be. It's important design around that. It's no longer just a physical space. It has to be other things in association with that device connects to something. It has to connect to something more than websites. It has to connect to a school-based location for learning. The other thing that blends into here is to recognize that students will self-organize in their own spaces. So how do we as educators take advantage of their ability to create spaces for learning on their own and recognize those and honor those, and actually leverage those. So it's a really complex question of what learning space looks like right now, but you can tell right now, for sure, it's much more than a physical classroom. So if we were to put it in the model, it could look like this, a very simple model where we have digital spaces. And what I'm suggesting here is that you take digital spaces and divide them into two things. One, a space for teachers, okay, and a space for students. For example, that could be Google Classroom as a digital space for teachers doing all the things that teachers can do online. And then Google Apps for Education might be the digital side of things for kids. And so there's some digital space actually divided into two kinds of identities. And the interesting thing about Google Apps for Education is it affords a lot of agency for kids. They can pick and choose the kind of tools they want, and so that's really a positive thing for kids. That's what we're looking for. The physical space joins those two elements, and those are linked together by that connector device, that conduit called the device. So in this case, the device is not something just seen to find resources, but it's seen as actually a tool that unites these different kinds of spaces together in a complete ecosystem of learning. All right, number 3. So we're talking about 21st century learning spaces support a range of experiences. And so if you have digital, physical, and virtual, that now suggests that the experiences that you can have are much wider. And so what I'm thinking about is the notion of a range of different kinds of experiences, from academic to social, to formal to informal, and from physical to visual. So there's some tensions that are quite interesting and compelling as we create additional capacity in the learning spaces, new kinds of ways to engage kids in learning emerge. So again, that's academic, social, formal to informal, and then digital to physical. Okay? And so when we talk about that, we can start, if you do believe that that's a possibility and having different kinds of experiences, let's talk about what that looks like in terms of experience, but also in terms of space. So these are some terms that you should know. These are to be conversing in a conversation around learning spaces, actually switching and changing the learning spaces. These are the terms. Flexible, anybody want to take a guess? Flexible is you can rearrange it, right? Agile means that you can do it quickly. So those two are shared together. Flexibility and agility are two things that go hand in hand. And obviously the ability to be flexible and agile means that you can reshift the experiences as you need to, or as you take some they can do that too. The third term, adaptive, means that your spaces are future-proof. It can mean a lot of things actually, but the way I intend to use is that if spaces are designed around experience, which you want student learning experience, if that shifts, then the idea is that your spaces should be able to shift along with the changing vision of what student learning should be. Spatial change is expensive, so you have to make sure that you do your due diligence and set up spaces that are flexible, agile, and adaptive, so they can meet changing conditions as your vision of what it looks like changes and adapts as well. Certainly, spaces are technological. Right? You have to have technology in 2015. You don't have technology that's not a contemporary space. And then the last two are some interconnected, means that they are connected to each other. Digital and physical are actually linked, okay? And that the spatial design is intentional. That's the linked to student experience. So, I just want to go back to this notion of interconnectedness and give you a provocation. So, do you believe that it's important it's important to teach kids how to learn how to collaborate? All your yes. That question, and you probably answered that question in the sense that we help kids understand how to do that all the time in digital environments, physical environments, face to face. So as new learning experiences take place in digital spaces, that becomes a reasonable location for learning. Do we as educators have the responsibility to also help students understand how to collaborate in a digital experience? That's different, right? Digital and physical experiences, those are two different things. So the question I have for you is that the works of multiple kinds of learning environments analysis suggests that the development of skills and how we teach kids have to occur in two different domains. Okay. The fourth thing is that as a 21st century learning spaces reflect the potential of the enemies. And what I mean by that is that when you have this larger landscape to connect kids into, Learning can be anytime, can be any place with everyone, and it can be across any device. So as you build out digital spaces for learning, you have to be considerate of how or what kind of tools you use so that all the different kinds of devices are responsive in nature. And every student can learn on any particular device for a particular event. So anytime, any place, anyone, any device, and down any path, which is really an intriguing kind of idea, because a broader, more expansive traditional learning suggests to us that students should have a choice of how they move through learning. And where within the curriculum, where within the teaching, the kids have an opportunity to select their pathway through learning. And when you're talking about learning spaces, the opportunity to be able to give kids the opportunity to shape their experiences by shaping their learning experience, or the learning experience as well as the learning space, something that's pretty compelling. So we have to start thinking in a much broader way in terms of how we shape learning and where it occurs, and what kids have the opportunity to shape on their own. That's when the truest sense of engagement comes into play, is when we empower kids to be able to make those choices, and how they engage in their learning arises from within based on their choice. And again, that's something that is sort of an intriguing idea to consider, is, do you create engagement experience for kids, or you empower kids to create engagement for themselves? I mean, the fifth one is really important to think about. The final one is that 21st century learning spaces should be something that ignite and catalyze learning. And I used to work for the third teacher course in Chicago, and the third teacher, that name is very specific and chosen. It was borrowed from the Reggio Emilia idea of space, along with peers and adults, and the three teachers and children. So the idea is that space has a tremendous impact on how shape learning runs, and spaces themselves actually are involved in the education of kids and teach kids. So right now, if you go back to that original picture of those kids sitting in rows, okay, are those kinds of spaces that catalyze the imagination, okay, and really create a boundless opportunity for learning. I'm a big believer in this. Is that as kids, I'm talking about secondary condition, high school condition, and we're talking about kids in line up in rows. We're talking about a condition that does not necessarily create conditions for wonder and curiosity, okay, and imagination and creativity. So we have to do better at that. Spaces, there's a great opportunity here. And what I'm asking you is to think about this as you move forward. You see all this wonderful technology, you want all these kinds of things that you're seeing in the sessions. Can your spaces that you have now in your schools, can they support those? That's a really important question. Right now, the IR space is contemporary enough to support the kind of learning that you expect for your kids and that your kids want, that your community wants. If not, you have to do some changes around that. Okay? Really, some good places to start are the prototyping classrooms, or if you have an opportunity to reshape a library, or reshape a common space where there is an opportunity for all staff members, all faculty to reach and work with the kids, and that's a really good start. Okay? Because everybody has an opportunity to access that. You can Google and you get spatial change. As I mentioned, spatial change is not an expensive proposition. It is an expensive proposition, but we are wise and very due diligence when we move forward with that. Take a look at the furniture in this area that KI is generously donated for this. Are these the kinds of things that you have in your classroom? Are these the kinds of things that would be useful to have in your spaces? You've got color, you have the opportunity for kids to use to engage in multiple different kinds of environments within the classroom. So these are the kinds of shifts that, as you walk around and see the different kinds there are other furniture manufacturers, but they're offering some really interesting and compelling things for classrooms. And our opportunity now is when you're thinking about classrooms, I really encourage you to step beyond and think beyond what the classroom concept means. What I suggest to you is really the first step in rethinking a classroom is to discard the notion that it has to be a classroom, because the notion of the classroom suggests certain things to us. If we step outside of our comfort zone, start thinking about studios, or thinking about labs, think about other ways in which we can frame our idea of what learning looks like. So first step in changing things. The other thing that's really important to do is get outside of school and go visit different areas where kids are learning. because the spaces that students are running in now in schools, in a lot of ways, don't survive in at the same kind of skills that they're all either working or learning outside of school. So there's a disconnect between the two venues. And it's something we have to change if we're serious. The other thing I want you to think about is professional development around learning spaces. So that's something we can help with if you're interested. But when is the last time you saw a professional development event on your professional development schedule in the schools? Doesn't happen, right? And it should, because of the importance of how to use space and craft instructional moments or instructional experiences or learning experiences. We have to consider space. One of the reasons that hasn't been done for 20 years of education I never saw is because that we had one size shape, one size space fits all. There wasn't an opportunity to have things like this purposely be reshaped to support different kinds of learning around. So there are lots of things we can do. There's opportunities to reshape spaces quickly, effectively, and inexpensively. There's a lot of things online. For example, you type in hack spaces or anything like that, you get very simple and easy techniques for changing spaces. If you have any questions about how to initiate or start, get someone moving it forward in terms of changes, hit it. Where'd you get this? This is a new book that ISTE2015 and Clarity Innovations has put out. It's Get Active, Reimagine Learning Spaces for Student Success. I have chapter 1 of chapter 2 on digital spaces, so if you're interested, there's lots of really good resources. That's one. I would suggest that you pick up a copy of The Third Teacher. It's another great book. Another really good resource is Make Space by the Stanford D School. And then the EduCause book on learning spaces you can actually download online, all the chapters online. So the first step is to get more informed about spaces and learn about those. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about developing inspired spaces, and then on Wednesday, the final presentation will be 10 things you can do tomorrow to improve your spaces. Increase how they support learning. So, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
All right, I have the prize to give away.